Welcome to Wide Flank.
Hey, welcome to Wide Flank. I'm Alon.
I'm Chris.
I'm Hayden.
So this is a different kind of episode. Obviously, Danny and Teddy aren't on here. We don't really have a name for it yet, but I'm just bringing some gamer friends on to talk about a game they've been playing obsessively lately called Guilty Gear Strive. Guilty Gear is a series of fighting games by Arc System Works. The first one in the series came out in 98. The latest one came out about 2 weeks ago, June 11th, called Guilty Gear Strive. There's all kinds of shit. There's novels, mangas, all kinds of stuff around the Guilty Gear series. Many of the games are widely considered some of the best 2D fighting games of all time. Strive is the 8th one in the series. And yeah, so you guys have been playing a lot. What do you like about it? Hayden, why don't you go?
All right. So specifically Strive, what I like about it is that so they set out to simplify Guilty Gear in this one, and I think they did a really good job at that while retaining like the Guilty Gear feel. And as someone who's not that good at fighting games, that feels like a breath of fresh air because I feel like I have a chance at getting good at this one. Whereas in Xrd, it seemed like an impossible wall to climb most of the time.
Yeah, I have kind of a similar sentiment. This is actually my first Guilty Gear game that I've played really deeply. I've played some other Arc System games. Like I played the Dragon Ball fighting game. I played BlazBlue. I played Persona 4 Ultimate Arena, whatever that was called. And yeah, I kind of have been in the fighting game community for a while and always understood Guilty Gear to be the one with the highest barrier of entry, the sort of most complicated systems, the most complicated execution. And yeah, ultimately I picked this game up, and I mean, maybe I'm playing a scrub character, but I felt like it was really accessible for me, from the get-go. It was pretty easy to dive in and feel successful. So that's been something I've really liked about it, and also just the general hype around a new game coming out. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily have to be a fighting game, but there's a sort of energy that comes with a competitive game that not everyone understands the system so deeply. Not everyone has over 1,000 hours or whatever.
Yeah.
And there's still space to learn, still space to grow, and to see the meta evolve in front of you. That's always a really exciting and fresh time to be a part of a competitive gaming community.
Yeah, I mean you come from mostly Street Fighter and different fighting games, but I think a lot of the skills are probably transferable to all the sort of 2D fighting games. But I'm not a fighting game person at all. I've played Strive more than any other fighting game probably in my life. Maybe Street Fighter 2 when I was in elementary school, but that's it. And yeah, there is the barrier to entry that you mentioned, and Hayden, you mentioned they kind of dumbed it down. When I first was watching it and you guys were explaining all of the really specific sort of tech stuff that the burst and Roman canceling and faultless defense and specials and all, it does feel overwhelming, but playing, I'm already better at this game than I've ever come close to being at any fighting game. And yeah, I've put more time into it, but it has that really good mix of easy to learn, but extremely difficult to master, and I think they just nailed that, right?
Yeah, for sure. I wouldn't even say they dumbed it down. I think they just simplified it, and they took out stuff that makes it harder in an unfun way. So I can give you an example. The character I pick, Milia, in Xrd, so you guys know that disc move I always throw out when I knock you down, right? It's a swirly thing. It goes over you.
Yeah. The hair mix up.
Yeah, that setup is the cornerstone of that character. In order to do that at all in Xrd, you have to do a micro dash input after you knock them down to close the spacing between them so that the disc actually reaches them.
Okay.
And does anything. And that input is just that one little thing is extremely hard to do, and it takes hours of practice. So in this game, they just made it so the disc kind of slides forward a little bit on its own. And instead, they give you all these other interesting things to do after it, which are also inputs that take practice, but they're not necessary to just do the thing at all. Whereas an extra, you couldn't even do it at all if you didn't master this really difficult input. So I think that's an example of just like simplification,
Right.
not dumbing down.
It's not dumbing down, right? That's like a harsh negative way of putting it. Yeah. It's almost like cleaning it up.
Yeah, exactly. It's cleaning it up. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah, my personal feeling too, I mean, I don't have the sort of like context of old games, and like I said, I play maybe like a scrubby character without as many combos, but I play Mei for everyone out there. Yes, Tatsugeki, Minasan Katayo, like, but like what I found when I was like first playing her is I felt like most of the combos with her are like pretty forgiving. Like there's a decent amount of like window after you've confirmed something where you can get your move out and it will connect. And even that was something that like took me a while in Street Fighter to get comfortable with, like with a lot of different characters. Like even some of the core combos, like they have pretty specific timing. And with Melee, it's not like there are complicated ones. Like you can get deep into her book of combos, or however you want to call it. But as far as like the bread and butter stuff, like it's pretty forgiving, and the inputs seem pretty forgiving. Like the charge motions for her are pretty forgiving in terms of like how long you actually have to charge it, and if you're doing it at a if you're doing like a horizontal charge move, you can do it from a down back diagonal, or if you're doing a vertical charge move, you can do it from a down back diagonal. So it's like forgiving in the sense of like playing defense or coming into it from like a different sort of like combo setup. So there's nuance, and there always will be, and there's room to like become an expert at it. But as far as like the sort of like entry level forgiveness of it, it seems pretty nice.
Yeah, it's all about that like balance of approachability and depth and complexity all in one. Because it's like I have moments when I'm playing where I hit like a 2-hit, 3-hit combo, and then I Roman cancel, which is like a fucking Guilty Gear only thing that people probably have no idea what we're talking about. I Roman cancel into a bigger combo, and I feel like free in that moment. Like I'm actually like doing stuff. I'm off book, like that would be the chess version of it. Like I'm just fucking riffing right now and hitting them. On the other hand, something that I always feel with fighting games is like I'm objectively not playing optimally right now, and that always bothers me. Like that, I hate that there is a punish out there, there is a combo out there that I should do every single time because it's the most damage. And while it's fun at low rank for a noob like me to just be like, I'm just gonna fucking YOLO this guy, I hate that it's just wrong.
So
objectively wrong.
You just said so much there that I want to respond to, by the way.
You
just
go
ahead.
first. I have some thoughts too.
Go first.
Me go first? Okay.
Yeah.
So my first thought is like I mean there are different types of players in every type of game. You can be a scientist, you can be a technician, or you can be just someone who like hard reads people.
Yeah.
And the way that I've always played fighting games, like I'm not a technician. I've never been the most technically proficient at any game I've played. I've never been like a lab rat. Like I don't go in and like look for new combos or look for optimizations of combos or like anything like that. The way that I play and the way that I've found success is find something that's really strong, that's really easy to do, that you can like figure out how it functions in basically like every exchange. And the example in Guilty Gear Strive would be like Mei's Dolphin. Like Mei's Dolphin is really, it's a charge move. It moves horizontally across the stream.
Yeah.
It's really fast. You can basically, you're finishing every, I just said I'm not technically, but you can finish basically any move. Like you can cancel that into horizontal dolphin. And it's really hard to punish. Like you have to put out a button right. There are a couple of characters who can punish it on block, maybe. I don't even know. It doesn't feel like it.
Probably ROM, just the range is so much, right? But
like ultimately what I like, the way that I work on a game plan is like figure out what is really efficient about a character that I like. Not efficient in the sense of like, oh, I got my opening, I'm going to do a max damage combo, and that's my efficiency. But like, figure out what sorts of different combinations are like working for me, are like opening people up, are getting me into favorable situations, and then focusing on that and focusing on the sort of meta game around that. Like, if I dolphin in, what is someone doing in a match? Right. What am I doing after I dolphin? Am I continuing with pressure? Am I blocking? Am I backdashing? What's their reaction to that? And is their backdash and is their reaction countering what my reaction was? And then you sort of like develop the metagame and conversation off of that. So yeah, I hear you that like it feels bad man a little bit to like, not know the optimal stuff, but I think ultimately the way that I like to play is reading my opponent, is developing the sort of like shared conversation that we're having around the actual match that we're having. And if they're comboing the hell out of me, like, you know what, so be it. I have to be better with my defense. Like, and that's something that I can do without being a lab rat. But because like, I don't know, I sit down with this game, like when I bought this game, I did all of the tutorial shit that I had to do, and then I immediately started playing ranked. Like I've never played a Guilty Gear before.
That's just how we are, right? We're like, just fucking freaks. Yeah.
I don't give a fuck. I want the adrenaline of like beating people or getting beat. Like that's what I care about. That's what that's what makes me satisfied by a fighting game.
But before you go in, Hayden, I just wanted to say that also I wasn't trying to like shit on the game or fighting games in general, because I probably win like 80% of my matches, and I don't know any combos, and I just learned the super for my first time. Like it's a good thing that I can win games without knowing that shit. There's just a little part of me that like I'm like, I read them, I blocked the thing, I countered the thing. I should have fucking killed them. Like I know that I should have done a thing there, but I'm too lazy to look it up, and I'm already queuing the next game.
Yeah, but in that situation, like /heavy/fireball isn't bad.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Like
it's not bad.
That's your bread and butter. That's enough. Like that's enough to be proficient.
All right, Hayden,
I didn't think you were shitting on the game, but so you said something a couple minutes ago about how you felt free in that moment where after you like roam in something or whatever. I think that freedom and that like that like player creativity element is one of the things that makes the Guilty Gear series so loved.
Interesting. I didn't know that was like unique to Guilty Gear.
It's like one of its hallmarks, and I think and I think like getting back to like what the simplification of Strive has kind of unlocked is that I think now so many more players so much sooner can actually get that feeling from the game where like even like a beginner who's new to fighting games, new to Strive, can play and feel that like freedom where you said you're off book. I think that's the whole point of Guilty Gear, is that you don't want to feel like you're on book all the time. The game is designed to give you that feeling, and I think they nailed that. And then you said that you want to like it annoys you when you can't optimize your combos, and I want to say that like the risk of simplifying a game is that if the skill ceiling isn't high enough, then you do dumb down the game, because solved. The people who are good get to that ceiling and then the game's done. But I think for like most fighting games, most good fighting games, but especially Guilty Gear, because of that creativity element, like there almost is no skill ceiling because it's so free. And like therefore like the meta is so important, because just the way somebody's going to handle a certain situation can be shifting, and like you're going to always be trying to predict what your opponent's doing. So it'll have like a metagame. And I think anytime you have like a strong metagame in any competitive game, that kind of like removes the skill ceiling. So I think that like the reason why I think this is like a successful simplification and not a dumb down is because like the risk of having a hard ceiling was never there for this series. And what they've done now is like way more players are going to get to a level where they appreciate the game and then can like keep pushing that ceiling of like what people are, the level people are actually playing at.
Right.
And they're gonna find these like new heights that have never been seen before in this series, or maybe even in fighting games in general.
Yeah, the comparison that I would make with like Roman canceling, if you think about like Street Fighter 4 and like FADC canceling something.
Why don't you explain what it is? Because some people listening, most people listening are like, what the fuck are you talking about?
The easiest way to explain Roman canceling, I mean,
before you talk about Roman canceling, we might have to explain what canceling means in fighting games in general.
It's like
that's a fighting game concept.
Brief history of canceling.
So start with just what's canceling in general first.
So you put out a move has recovery. If you cancel that move, the recovery is shortened. I think that's the easiest way I could think to describe like canceling in a traditional sense.
Cancel is short for cancel the recovery frames.
And fighting games, an easier way for me as a non-fighting game player to think of it is that fighting games are simulating fights, IRL, right? Like boxing or whatever. It's like the amount of time that your hand is coming back after a punch that's what you're canceling. You're canceling the frames of that,
Yeah. And what ends up interesting, so like there are other sorts of canceling systems across all types of fighting games. I come predominantly from Street Fighter 4, which has a system called the FADC system, which is similar in that it utilizes like the meter that you accrue throughout the match doing various things.
Right.
Like I can't remember all the things that give you meter in Street Fighter, but it's usually like taking damage, dealing damage. Like those are generally how you gain meter, and you spend some of that meter to cancel a move and effectively make it safe. So a dangerous move you could make particularly safe. And what makes Guilty Gear Strive and Guilty Gear in general, I hate you would have to speak to this more than me, like unique as opposed to a Street Fighter 4 is there's like a pretty limited set of moves that you can actually cancel in Street Fighter 4. It's limited to like some of the more unsafe special moves and some of the like more hard hitting like normals and that kind of stuff. Whereas in Guilty Gear, you can cancel anything. You can cancel anything while it's hitting. You cancel anything after it's gone out. You can just Roman cancel out of nowhere, like doing nothing. And the cancels for Roman cancels have different properties.
Yeah.
And that's sort of one of the reasons why I think Hayden, this is something you said that I've really liked is that like Guilty Gear and the Roman cancel system like gives you so much creativity. It lets you change any aspect of your game plan and add on sort of like a little bit of nuance, a little bit of like a wrinkle, just to make your opponent be thinking about it more. Whereas like you get used to what is cancelable in like a Street Fighter 4, but like the idea that you can cancel something, you didn't even do anything, you can cancel it, and that's like a viable strategy.
Right.
And like I see a lot of this in pro play on just like Twitch streams I've been watching of like someone jumped over another person and the person standing on the ground does a Roman cancel to slow down the opponent up in the air and then immediately jumps and air grabs them. Like that's a really like untraditional play, at least in terms of like how I've thought about fighting games. But it's really, really interesting to see that be something that is like a really viable technique.
Right.
Right on. Yeah, and the cool thing is Roman cancel has been a part of the Guilty Gear system since the very first one.
Which is wild.
I believe.
Like that's a crazy innovative thing that they came up with.
I know, and that's like and the cool thing though is that I feel like in each iteration they've been making the Roman cancel system even cooler and more creative. And I think they took it to like a whole new level in Strive, because in Strive there's actually 5 different kinds of Roman cancels in Strive. I believe
I said 4, my bad.
Xrd had like 3 or 4. The 5th one is kind of like a cheat. It's the fast one where you can cancel the cancel. You can cancel the Roman cancel.
Oh my god!
That's like the 5th one.
I heard you like cancels, so we canceled
exactly.
Not only that, but they also added this thing called Roman cancel drift, where you can now, if you dash during a Roman cancel, your character will kind of like drift a little bit in midair in slow mo.
Oh, cool.
And that even just gives you even more, just a little bit more of that like creativity, where like if you just have to be in a slightly different position after the cancel to make something work, the system lets you do that now.
There's
so
also,
it's just like
it's
awesome.
Another thing that I want to clarify, I feel like I'm gonna have to do this a lot because just the terminology and like the intuitiveness in fighting games has always been another barrier to entry for me. It's just like if you like look up Street Fighter, like how do I do this combo? It's like you have 1/60th of a frame to get this button and then 2/60th of a frame to hit this. But if you hit them at the same time, you get 3/60th of a frame. I'm like, what does that mean? You know, like fuck off.
Like planking, I think is
what
you're referring
it's
to.
just like ridiculous shit that like is so non-intuitive, non-logical, like barrier to entry. And I know Roman canceling sounds like that, but I mean, I play with a PS4 controller because I'm a scrub, and I just press one button to Roman cancel. So even if I'm just fucking punch, Roman cancel, punch, it still gives you that satisfaction of I just hit a 6-hit combo. I just fucking Roman canceled this guy. Like I'm the best. You know, that freedom still exists, even though it sounds like a ridiculously like difficult, complicated thing when we're just talking about it probably.
Yeah. But when you want to learn how to optimize your stuff, and this is where the skill ceiling comes in, like all those, one frame timings, that's like 1/60th of a second, like that will actually matter in some situations for whether it's optimal or not.
Yes. And so, another thing also is just, I just wanted to add also, sorry to cut you off, is like also the graphical representation of like the Roman canceling is essential and like beautiful. Also, it's it literally shows like a clock on the screen and changes colors and slows down time. So everyone knows like you're Roman canceling. So it's not a 1/60th. It's not like hit a button 1/60th of a second and then hit another button 1/60th of a second. It lets you hit a button. This is what the Roman canceling is doing. If it's hitting them, if it's comboing them, if it's missing, whatever. And then you do your next input, which is also like a really big part of it not being crazy complicated.
Yeah, for sure. The developers, when they were talking about the game when it was in development, said they were a big part of their goal was to design it to be fun to watch instead of just play. And I think like they did a good job on that too through the visuals that you just described.
Well, that's
among other things.
We should talk about that because I think visually there's a lot going on. And when I was first watching you guys play, you guys were just streaming on Discord and I hadn't played yet. I actually like in my head was thinking of asking you guys, is it too are the backgrounds too distracting? Obviously when you play you don't even fucking notice the backgrounds. Like it could be anything, you don't even notice. But when I'm watching, I'm like, it's so sick. I'm like watching like an incredible anime or something.
Yeah.
And it's so over the top. And there's the slow-mos when you Roman, there's cinematics when you hit someone through a wall, there's cinematics when you special, there's a fucking counter thing that's literally half the size of the screen if you hit a big enough counter. There's like all this shit. How do you guys feel about the graphics?
Yeah, I mean when I first started playing like fighting games seriously, I was like coming from the background of someone who was like really invested in single player story games. Like I wasn't a competitive person. I mean I was a competitive person, but I wasn't like a really competitive gamer when I started playing fighting games. And I remember I did this like at NYU, like at in my fucking game class. And I remember arguing with my professor all the time who like was this big advocate for like all games would be better if everything was like a gray box and like like none of the content matters. Like all that was sort of his argument. Sure. And I was sort of arguing from the other way. I was like, no, like this lore is dope. Like it's not. Fighting game lore is like so fucking stupid. But I remember it got to this point where like throughout the course of being in this class, I remember like going up to him at the end of it. I was like, dude, you're right. Like it does not matter what your character looks like. Like you want your character to look sick, but like after 1,000 hours or even 10 hours, like you don't care about that. You care about what your hitboxes are. You care about what your combos are. You care what's proficient. Like I don't look at the background. I don't watch. I mean, Hayden, you can. I know you're more into this than me, but
yeah, I think
I didn't like. He's ready. He's ready. But I didn't watch fucking story mode. The story is hilarious and ridiculous and anime, but like I don't care. That's not where I'm like getting my satisfaction from the game at. It's one of those things that I think people get different things out of it. But as you get deeper and deeper into any competitive game, I think you stop seeing what the game is about and start seeing like the game as a system and thinking about it as a system. Like I'm not a girl character who's adorable with a huge fucking anchor anymore. I'm a girl character with an anchor, or not
bullshit
anchor, but like a big hitbox that takes up like the whole fucking screen if I do it while I'm jumping. Like,
but I was gonna say that, but like
of.
I agree with you, and I think me and you clearly come from the purely like competitive side. Even for us, I feel like you were still attracted to the game and your character through the visuals. Even though now at this point it's just a hitbox, it still like got you in. And just to use another game as an example, I was looking up YouTube clips of like Evo Fantasy Strike Top 8 because I was like, what is this? Like I know about the game, but I remember, dude, it is so fucking lame. Like I was looking at it, I was like, I would never play this. I'm just not interested at all. If you guys were streaming this on Discord, I'd be like, this game sucks. But you guys stream Guilty Gear, and I'm like, this is fucking dope.
That's a super fair caveat. And yes, I didn't pick May because she's like a scrub character. I picked her because I'm like, oh, you're fucking adorable. I always play girl characters in fighting games. It's just the way that it goes. I prefer it that way. But yeah, at a certain point, there's a dissonance between like I picked this character because I like the aesthetic, and now like the playstyle is just like how I understand the game and how I converse within the context of the game.
Right.
Yeah. I love this topic. This topic is maybe like my favorite thing in the world. So So let me talk about this a little bit.
Okay.
I love the perspectives you guys have offered on this are perfect so far, actually, to set me up for what I want to say.
Thank you.
So I like how, Chris, I like how you were telling about how you were in like a class and like the professor was like put in this point of view and you eventually like came around. I feel like anyone who's ever like either been really into games or studied games goes through that arc. Where like
the narratology versus ludology, or how
or just like
it.
they like games, they get into games as a kid or whatever, and they're like games are sick. They like the storyline, like Final Fantasy VII is such a sick storyline, whatever. And
I'm such a Final Fantasy kid,
and they like that about games. But then like as they get deeper, especially if they start studying design, they get more into the like. A friend of mine always just said that it's the X's and O's of the game. It's just like it's all like it's all symbolic. It's all abstract. The graphics are just like a veneer on like a thing underneath that really matters, right?
Right.
I feel like everyone goes through that arc, and I am no different. Like I went through that arc. I think at some point, probably in college or after, I was like firmly in the camp of like, yeah, like stories are stupid. The graphics don't really matter. But then for me, like it didn't end there. Like at a certain point when I got a little older, I started realizing like there were certain games in from my past that like when I really thought about them, it's like the game wasn't that good. Like it was kind of a bad game. But it's like, why do I like this game so much? And like I could have been like, oh, actually, I don't like that game anymore. But I realized in some cases that there are still things about the game like I really liked. So an example of this is like the Sonic the Hedgehog series, like from the Genesis games, like Sonic 1 through 3 and Knuckles, right? Like those games are kind of shitty as games, like to be honest, like they're objectively mediocre games, but like the visuals and the audio, especially of those games is like best in generation.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I could make the same argument too about like Final Fantasy games. Like it pains me to say it a little bit,
sure,
but like the gameplay in those games has its moments maybe, but like it's not phenomenal. Like you're there because it's an incredible world with incredible characters and incredible music. Like
so when I started realizing this, like that there was like this dissonance where it's like, well, I still like that game even though it's not a good game.
Right.
What I realized is that like what's so cool about video games is that it's both at the same time. Like they are games where they're abstract X's and O's, and that's really what matters in some cases. But they're also like narratives and characters and like fictional worlds, and they're and like multimedia creations, like in terms of like music and everything.
Yeah,
like they are both of those things simultaneously, and I think that you really can't perfectly separate them in most cases. Like the experience of playing a game, by definition, is to experience both of those things simultaneously.
Definitely.
And I think like that the truth of that came out in the fact that like Chris, you admitted that like you picked May at first because she was a cute girl, and then you realize, oh, she also has big hitboxes and she's the kind of character I want to play, so I'm going to keep playing her. Mm-hmm. See how it's like it's both at the same time, and that's okay, and that's awesome. Like, that's
I definitely
the
like
thing in the world about games.
I try and box it out a little bit. Like ultimately, I think that professor, I've heard more recently that he has become less like Team Greybox and is more like, what, maybe there is something to like the narrative side of games, and I wonder if I played a part in that. I don't know.
I
maybe
feel
it's a little egotistical, but
they're just.
Which professor is that? I think I know who you're talking about.
It was Charles Pratt.
Absolutely, that's what I thought.
I mean, for me, it's funny because I'm so much less versed in like the single player story games than you guys are. I mean, like for people who've listened to the past episodes, like when I was 12, I stopped playing any games other than competitive first person shooters, and that's all I ever played. But even me, I'm like, when Valorant came out, I was like, it just looks so shitty and stupid and feels bad. I just can't get into this. Fortnite was the same. It was like, I was obsessed with PUBG, and Fortnite was all the hype. And yeah, I played a good amount of it, but the whole time I was like, this just looks and feels so stupid. And like, that
for sure.
It definitely, I've never had a moment in time where I've been like, it doesn't matter. Like, I just play the game. I just shoot the head, kill the ghoul vibe. But like, yeah, so it's interesting for me that like you guys have had that and I haven't had that, even though I'm pretty much strictly competitive games in my past. And I don't know.
Yeah, and so back to Guilty Gear, like you're right that Guilty Gear has like a ridiculous anime storyline, and especially Strive, like they just did an amazing job on the visuals. Like it looks
Incredible,
absolutely beautiful.
Yeah,
and like even Xrd, the previous iteration, like was groundbreaking visually because it was the first time ArcSys kind of debuted their like technology for making like 3D graphics look like hand drawn 2D.
Mm.
And they've used this technique in like in subsequent games, like Dragon Ball Fighters is like the next
It's
level.
in the
of
Persona game as well, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right. But then with Strive, they just like they took it to the next level, and they just like this game looks 100% like a hand drawn anime in almost every moment.
Yeah, it really
on
does.
the screen. It's all 3D, and it has the camera movement of a 3D game, and it's just like you can't discount how much of a impact that makes on like the first impression of people seeing the game. It's like this looks awesome to play. I want to play this.
That's what happened to me. That's what happened to everyone who's in the Wide Flank Discord, basically. And by the way, everyone listening should join the Wide Flank Discord. But we're always streaming it, and everyone's like Damon's gotten into it, Andy's gotten into it. They're like, this looks sick. This game looks amazing, and
it sounds sick too.
It sounds sick too.
Soundtrack.
Yeah. But what I was gonna follow up and ask, because I don't know this kind of thing, is like, some of the cinematic stuff, does that, like, at the high competitive level, is that a drawback? Like the fact that it cuts to like a close-up of May flying through the wall cinematic when you're not inputting buttons or you're not fighting in those moments, right? Like, does that like take you out of it?
Most
You know what
fighting
I mean?
games have those kind of like cutscene moments for supers and stuff.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. A lot of fighting games have that. I mean, it sort of factors into the like over the topness of the game and that sort of thing. Like as far as like games go, like you're not inputting anything in that moment, so it's not a like competitive distraction, right? Like it's a chance for you to. It's also a chance for you to like reset and like breathe for a moment. Like,
I like that because I'm a fucking noob, but I just didn't know if like at the high level that's just like an annoyance because you're in the middle of a combo, you're in the middle of reading your opponent, you're in the middle of beating your opponent, and there's a break. You know,
but I personally don't think so. But I did hear a lot of criticism of Strive before it came out from people that like. There's too much shit going on the screen, like the giant counter,
the combo
giant
counter's
combo
a little
counter.
over the top.
People are like, "This is distracting." I never felt that way, but you know, some people do have these feelings. And
the argument I would make against that is like the combo counter, since there are different like tiers of countering that you can get, like more intensity, which gives you higher like combo potential off it.
Yeah.
Like ultimately that being bigger is like a game design decision by them as much as it is like an exciting like narrative decision. It's like meant to indicate that like really bigly, like you can have a sick combo after this. Like make sure you recognize that this is available.
And again, it goes back to being the spectacle. Like you can imagine this on stage at Evo and people seeing a 22 hit combo and fucking screaming and freaking out because that's so sick. And it literally takes up half the screen and says 22 hit combo and get fucked.
So the other thing I want to say is that like busy visuals is like not a new thing in fighting games, not just from like a like aesthetic narrative point, but I mean the game that I always think about as being like one of the most complicated, difficult games, not just to play but to watch, is like the Marvel vs. Capcom series, like especially Marvel vs. Capcom 3. But at the same time, I remember in like my heyday of like watching professional fighting games, like the busyness on the screen was like incredibly exciting. Like the sort of massive like cool animations and just not even knowing what's going on at some points of the matches, but then like all of a sudden seeing someone catch someone in a combo and like the hype of the crowd happening and like all that sort of thing. And then conversely, like when you're playing that sort of thing, like that was a really accessible game. Like supers were really easy to do in it, and it was like, I don't know, I just like clicked a button and like the entire universe like opened up and then like shredded my opponent. Like that's sort of like crazy over the top. I mean, that's intrinsic to fighting games. It's also like very anime.
True.
So I think that there's sort of like a precedent that's been set there.
I feel like that's the type of thing your professor would be like, this is bad. Screen real estate. Too much visuals. Like, you know, but whatever.
But in a lot of cases, it's in, I mean, sort of like with the wall breaking Guilty Gear, it's in a non-gameplay moment. But with Guilty Gear, it is a gameplay moment. Like you break someone through the wall, it's a reset, right? It's a neutral reset, unless you supered them through the wall, in which case it's an advantage for the person who supered them through the wall. So I think that there's like a cool sort of
there's a moment still
mechanical aspect to this like sort of exciting, more video driven moment.
And there's also bursting, which we haven't even mentioned somehow, which is also a thing you can do in like the cinematic moment, right? You can input a burst. So yeah, I guess there's options still. Whew, that's a lot of action.
So yeah, ask us more questions.
So this was a question from Ryan on our Discord. He said, I'm a longtime fighting game guy. Street Fighter 2 is one of the first games I ever truly loved. Pretty much all of the games I play / played are Capcom and SNK fighters. Never actually played an Arc System Works game. What am I missing out on? What's especially fun or compelling about anime fighters that I'm not getting out of Street Fighter or King of Fighters, or for that matter, Tekken or Smash?
Sure. Yeah, I can say something about this.
Go.
So I like that he mentioned the anime fighters subgenre.
Yeah,
which is definitely a thing. ArcSys is kind of known as one of like the pioneers of that subgenre. I would say what I mean, you can get technical about what like defines an anime game versus not, but like I would say the most universal is just like how over the top they are in terms of like the systems and like what is possible to do, especially in terms of like combo length, things like air dashing, blocking in the air, all these things that like are impossible in real fights. Because if you think about Street Fighter, it's obviously like totally fictional and fantasy, but you can see it's like a little more grounded in like real fighting concepts. Whereas I feel like the anime genre is more like, let's just break all the rules of physics here and make it a fun game. And to me, that's kind of what you're missing out on if you've never really played anime fighters.
I never thought about
the example
that,
I would give is like ArcSys made the DBZ fighting game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the example I would give is I remember watching Dragon Ball Z growing up and thinking it was really sick that there were like crazy strong people like flying through the air, throwing energy balls at each other, like punching so fast that you can't see their hands. Like all of that stuff was like really exciting. And then I remember all of the like Dragon Ball Z games that came out around that time, and they just like did not do a good job of making you feel that you were like that powerful. Like there was something missing, whether it was like graphically or there's a ton of reasons, and I'm not going to like deconstruct every Dragon Ball fighting game or Dragon Ball game that's ever been made. But then when DBZ Fighter came out, it sort of leveraged these systems, and that's what Arc System does, is like there's a lot of like parallels between their games, sort of as Hayden, as you were mentioning, in terms of air dashing, in terms of like being more in the air, like unnatural movements, long combos, like excitement to that end. And what they did with the Dragon Ball fighting game was, I think, as far as I know in terms of the history of Dragon Ball games, is like made you feel like you were a character in that TV show, like made you feel that sort of like over the top excitement, powerful. And so that resonates, I think, in games like Guilty Gear and games like and the Persona fighting game. And yeah, ultimately at the end of the day, like advice of what are you missing out on? Like, should you get into it? Like that's ultimately up to you. Like if you're going to deep dive into a game, you kind of really have to go head first into it. I think it's kind of hard to play fighting games casually unless you have other people around you who are also playing them casually. Like that's one of the most fun environments, right, to like play together and learn together. So if it's something that's like visually appealing to you, if you kind of want the excitement of being anime strong, then I think it's definitely worth getting into and exploring. Or if there's like a local community that you can play with, then it's worth getting into. But otherwise, I think you're getting what you're getting out of fighting games from the games that you're playing too.
Yeah, I was also going to say, and I could be totally off here because I have so much less experience in the other games, but I feel like the diversity of character styles and feels is larger in this game than I remember in the Street Fighters and stuff like that. Yeah. And I could be the basics are still there, right? There's some squishies, fast guys. There's some huge grapplers, like blah, blah, blah. But maybe I'm just getting like deceived by the look of everything, but that's how I feel. I wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're onto something there. I wouldn't disparage like Street Fighter as there isn't a good variety of characters, but I think like the Guilty Gear games, another thing they're kind of known for is it's kind of like pushing character archetypes like to the limits.
That's a better way of putting it.
And making like just like ridiculous versions of a grappler or of like a speed character. I think that's they do a good job of that.
Yeah,
so I think that's
more
what
I
feeling.
mean. Because it's not like there's that many characters. There's like pretty few, right? I mean, compared to other games.
The launch roster is not that big, but they'll expand it.
But like, it still feels sort
of
complete
I would say
to me. You know?
Yeah, the other thing that you might be feeling is like. Guilty Gear games have never been afraid to like put just like weird character designs in the game, like ones that just like break all the rules. And it's like this character is just totally different from every other fighting game character you've ever played. Have fun, you know.
Yeah.
I would say the best example of that in Strive is Zato. I don't know if you guys have seen him yet. He's not very popular because he's difficult to play.
Which one is he?
He's like Shadow Guy. So he basically.
I don't think I've fought him.
You're basically controlling two characters. He's like the Ice Climbers of Guilty Gear.
I was gonna say he's like Shaco, League of Legends.
Yeah, kind of. So he's like, you have like your main guy, and then he's got his shadow. You can summon out.
Or Zed.
And the shadow. You can input moves for the shadow.
Oh, that's sick.
Separately from your main character. So
Zed is more like Zed in League.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know all the League characters as well as you, but it's so like that's an example of just like, and I'm sure as they expand the roster in the DLC, they'll just keep adding even more wacky versions of characters that are like just outside the box characters. Like Xrd had some really wild ones. I don't know if they're gonna hit that high point in Strive.
We'll see.
We'll see. Yeah.
Luke's question is sort of a relevant follow-up. He said, "What are your initial thoughts on the balance? Is the Mei hate warranted, or do scrubs just gotta get good?"
That's a great question. I'll field that one.
Yeah.
As a Mei main, I feel like I should field that one. I think it's hard for me to like disconnect the fact that I have really strong fighting game fundamentals from the fact that Mei is like a very strong and beginner friendly character. Is the Mei hate warranted? Like, she's fucking annoying to play against. Like, I'll admit that much. When I beat people and all I do is dolphin all around and they're good players, like I play at a pretty high rank, then it makes me feel like maybe she's overpowered. But then some people come into matches against me and like know how to play patient and know how to, play around it. And it's like anything, right? There are counters to anything you do. There's no perfect move. And to the point of like balance on the roster in general, something I've heard a lot of people say and something that I feel in a lot of my matches, sort of regardless of which character I'm playing against, but especially against like Soul and Chip and Leo and like those sorts of characters, is like every character in the roster kind of has like at least one tool that's like pretty fucking cheap and broken. And I think that's a good thing, because it's not like there's counterplay. There's absolutely counterplay, but it's nice because it allows people to be effective while like as I was kind of talking about earlier, while like developing their play style around this one very powerful strategy. So
in Mei's case, that's the dolphin, and
in Mei's case, that's the dolphin. It's like how you work that into your game plan and how people play around it, and then it sort of starts to open up. Like, obviously, Mei has other tools in her toolkit. Like it starts to open up how else you play. Like, how do you work in your jumping attacks? How do you work in your overheads? Like, how do you work in the fact that they're blocking all the time because you're dolphining a lot? So Mei is very strong. The Mei hate is warranted because she's annoying, I guess, but I wouldn't call her overpowered. I wouldn't really call anyone in the roster overpowered. Like, there are a lot of people who have like kind of broken shit, but if everyone kind of has broken shit, then who cares? Like, it sort of just makes it more fun because it means that there's a lot of characters that are viable to play in the cast.
Yeah, what do you think, Hayden?
Yeah, I want to add something to this, and if this becomes too ranty, just cut me off. But like, I think that in general, and I think this probably started when like online games kind of became mainstream, is that like complaints about balance and balance patches are just like way overdone.
Oh my god, I couldn't agree more.
Like,
couldn't agree more.
Even if again, this game is like 2 weeks old or something, less than 2 weeks old.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way anybody can actually know right now if something is overpowered.
Absolutely.
Because hasn't been enough time for someone to figure out how to beat it yet. And I think in general, like, if you let players figure shit out, like something that you thought was overpowered and broken actually turns out isn't. And maybe there's some other shit that nobody knew about that is broken.
Yes.
And I think it's so much more interesting to let player communities like really explore the game to the limits before you start being like, this is broken. Let's fix it immediately before people get upset. And like, look, sometimes things actually are broken in games and then you need to patch, but it's way overdone right now. And like, I think that this is kind of going off topic, but the best example of this is like, look at the original StarCraft, one of the most competitive games in history.
Yep.
And it hasn't had a balance patch in like 15 years or something. Like they didn't do a lot of balance patching and it's still played at an insane level professionally. You know, that you don't really need to see any more proof than that.
No, I mean,
well,
I completely agree. This is like almost a whole nother podcast. It's like, because I want to like really get both of your thoughts on all of this shit, but it's like, fuck. But yeah,
this is the classic. Sorry, I just want to add one thing. This is the classic like Serlinism too, right? Mm-hmm. Like language, your language about what is broken in this game doesn't matter at all. Like you can tell me that me spamming dolphin is broken, but you should be able to beat it. You should be able to beat it within the context of the language of the game. Yeah. And you know, maybe it's a very strong move, but that doesn't matter. That doesn't mean that there's not counterplay. Yeah. So this is what he characterizes like you're a scrub if you're going to say that this is broken. Right. Like
that's
like
an
all you
excuse
can
that
do.
Scrubs making.
Yeah.
So exactly. To answer Luke's question, it's like get good because what I was going to say is I fucking suck. I've never beaten you, Dugan. I probably never will beat you. I'm just being honest, but like
that's true.
I think the character that I play is decent against May. Or at least that's how it feels to me.
It's a really tough. When I play against high level ROMs, it's a really tough match.
Yeah, because Ram's the other character. People are like, this character is broken.
Because maybe we just both play the most broken characters. But like, we've had rounds where I've been really patient and tried basically just spacing you. Like I'm just gonna slash you when you dolphin in on me or jump in on me, and they've been close rounds. Mm-hmm. And like. For me to be able to have close rounds with you, who's like the literal highest rank possible in the game, is like, obviously she's not broken. Because like if I just had a few more skills or a few more punishes or something to add to what are already close rounds, then we'd be having even fights. So to me, it's just like, no, I mean like,
well, let me check you there a little bit. We wouldn't exactly be having even fights. It would mean that I would have to not autopilot you a little bit.
Yeah. No, you know what I mean.
which matters. Like that's significant, right?
Yeah. No, I meant I guess I more meant if I was a ROM on your skill level, then Dolphin's not broken. But like when it's just that I think people just get annoyed because like you said, it is really annoying and it's overwhelming and just like toxic. Like it just happens over and over and over again. And like but yeah, I don't know.
Also, people don't like losing to like cute shit too. Like I think that is like I think that she is like
she's kawaii.
Her design is tilting.
Yeah,
like a little bit, which plays into my style as well. Like I like to tilt people. Like I like to be oppressive. I like to
so toxic.
Yeah, it's fucking toxic, but it's a play style, you know.
Yeah, it is. I guess like. One of the things that I definitely wanted to talk about also is just, and this might just be you, Hayden, again, just going off, but like I've seen a lot, I've read some reviews and stuff in preparation for this podcast, but everyone is raving about the netcode and the rollback system. And I remember months ago when I was watching you play the last Guilty Gear, you were fucking freaking out excited about how good the netcode, etc. is going to be on this game. And I have like a very, very rough idea on what that means, but like, what did they do and why is it so good? And then also, what did they do with the matchmaking system and why is it so fucking bad? Because that also is in the same space.
Yeah, for sure. So do you want like the short version of this or the long version?
Short.
Okay.
Layman's terms.
So basically there's two types of netcode for fighting games. Rollback is like the bad one, like the more traditional one. And then, sorry, I got that wrong. Rollback is the new one and like the good one. Delay based is the old one. And all that really means is like delay. So when you have a network game, there's going to be there's a certain amount of time that it takes for like the inputs from one player to get to the other person's computer, right?
Yeah.
So what a delay based game does is it actually just, adds delay from the point that you push the button to when the move actually comes out on screen, and it adjusts that delay dynamically to account for the network lag. So like if it takes 5 frames from my button press to get to your computer over the internet, it's gonna mean I'm not gonna see my shit happen on my screen until 5 frames later.
How was that ever the solution? Like that worked for tic-tac-toe.
It's the easy solution.
For competitive gaming, it's a fucking
It's the
joke.
easy solution because you don't have to do anything else. All you do is you put that delay in, and then everything will just work. But it sucks to play. Yeah. Specifically because as the network time fluctuates, like that delay time is going to have to fluctuate.
Right,
so your timing on all your combos and stuff is always constantly changing, and it just it sucks.
Nightmare. Right? So then what's rollback?
So rollback is this technology that's actually not that new. It's been around for like over a decade, I think. Okay. And it's even as of like a few years ago, I think, been like a really good version of it called GGPO has been open source. So there's just no excuse for every single fighting game to have this.
Yeah, I think that's what Fantasy Strike uses.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. There's really no excuse that like there's any fighting games left that don't use this. But you know, Japanese developers traditionally are a little slower to adopt new technologies, and this has just been one sticking point where like they just have not been putting rollback in their games. But people love Japanese fighting games. You know, like they're like most people. Their favorite fighting games are from Japanese developers. So you know, the community, the fighting game community has just been like begging every developer, like, please put rollback in your game. And like every indie fighting game does it because it's just like, no one's going to play
open source, right?
No one's going to play your delay-based indie fighting game for sure.
Right, true,
you know?
true. It can't be like dog shit,
Yeah. So like some indie fighting games, people were playing them just because it was rollback. And it's like, that's a reason enough to play it.
That's crazy.
So anyway, finally a major Japanese, I mean, actually, to be fair, Capcom put rollback into Street Fighter V, but they fucked it up. Like the implementation was broken and it didn't really work right.
No.
Yeah. So it kind of like gave it a bad name. But anyway, ArcSys listened and they put rollback in Strive and they did it right. So what that basically means is like when you hit a button, it shows up on your screen after a fixed delay. I mean, there is still a slight delay, and I think in Strive it's 1 or 2 frames. Every online game has some input delay,
which is 1/60th or 2/60th of a second.
But the key is that it's a fixed amount of time always. Your move shows up on your screen at that time, and then what it does is when it predicts what your opponent's next input's going to be. So and the way and I think the simplest prediction is just assume they're going to have the same input as last frame, and that's like the most effective way to predict the input.
Okay.
And what it does is if the prediction's wrong and like the input it gets, you know, a few frames later after the message comes in, if it was wrong, it actually just behind the scenes rewinds time in your game, in your version, and then starts it again from that point correct. And the effect that has is like you might what the player might see is like some of the first few frames of like an animation might just be cut off or something.
Oh, you know? I see. Okay.
It basically behind the scenes fixes whatever desync happened as a result of the delay.
So
and it proceeds along just as normal, and it's like you're really playing against them in real time because the rollback system is constantly fixing all the discrepancies.
I see.
So it's basically in layman's terms, or in Guilty Gear Strive layman's terms, it's Roman canceling its failed predictions.
Yeah, it's frame canceling its failed predictions.
And like the reason why, and like just really briefly, I don't want to go too much into it because you wanted the short version, but like the reason that's so much harder to implement from like the programming perspective is because in order for the whole fighting game system, all the graphics, all the sound, all the everything about the game, in order for it to support that like ability to rewind, is you have to program things in a certain way such that they can be rewound.
Yeah.
And that it works, you know, like rewinding time in a game is not a trivial thing. You know, that takes a certain amount of, like, you have to do things a certain way to make that even possible. And that's why it's harder to implement. But
that's sick.
These days in 2021, there's no excuse anymore. And I'm glad ArcSys did it.
They did a great job. And in the whatever, I've played 5 hours. Like, I've had maybe one laggy fight. Every other fight's been like felt really good. But the matchmaking system, dude.
Oh yeah, that question.
It's
Chris,
comically bad.
There's no excuse. I'll let Chris explain. You can try to explain it. Good luck.
Yeah. So I guess for people who don't know, like we've talked about Guilty Gear Strive a lot. We've talked about anime fighters a lot. Like I think that's pretty easy to like visualize.
Yes.
The matchmaking system is like this like totally different product. It's like this team has no association with like the rest of the team that is working on Guilty Gear Strive. It's like a character customizable pixel mansion with like a butler and like fight stands that you can stand on.
Yes.
And like as good as the like frames are in the actual fighting game, like you're in these lobbies with like, 20 to 30 other people. I think 32 is the cap. And it like does not update the frames like even close to real time. Like you'll have a pixel guy who's like standing here and then all of a sudden he's like through the floor and like over here and then like up here and like Hayden and I like on night one especially when it was like they've like patched it some
twice,
and it's gotten a little better. Like it's still not good. But I remember on the first day we were like trying to find each other based on like our descriptions of avatars in like one of these rooms because specific matchmaking was just not working at all. Like you couldn't search for a custom room code and find that room. Like how fucking ridiculous is that? But we're like trying to find each other on the same floor and I'm like, yeah, I'm here. I'm like standing right next to you and Hayden will be like, you are not standing next to me. You are somewhere else flying around like at the front of the thing and I'm just like, how is it even possible
like
that
30
we're
seconds
like,
later it's like, oh here now you're there and you're like no I'm not there anymore. It's like, completely unusable.
It's just like unbelievable that this even like gets through the meetings or whatever. It's like, let's just have a giant 8-bit dollhouse and you walk up to people and challenge them instead of just like normal
and I'm just gonna
matchmaking.
like in defense of ArcSys, I'm just gonna say like they had to delay this game twice.
Yeah.
If they were going to cut corners on anything, I'm glad they cut corners on that and not the gameplay. At least they made the right decision there.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot more shit that I think we could talk about, but I think we have a pretty concise, good pod about what's a really fun game that I'm definitely going to keep playing. And thanks guys. Thanks for hanging.
Thanks for having us. It was really fun. It's fun to talk about it. Fun to go back to the NYU foodology, narratology days a little bit. Really stoked. I'm probably gonna go play more right after this.
Let's I'm hyped on it. I want to play, not edit the podcast.
Give me a few rounds against Giovanna, Chris.
That's what we need. That's what we need.
Let's do it. I don't remember
always
any
work
inputs,
on something. Don't tilt. But
oh my God.
Definitely join the Discord because we're always playing something, this or Rocket League or whatever, and streaming and just hanging and talking about games and stuff. So thanks.